Well, joining us now to talk more about this is Congressman Mark DeSaulnier from Concord. Okay, we're going to go into the negotiations for DACA, the Dreamers, 800,000 of them. Question, he appears to be ready to deal something, but what do the Democrats want in return?
Well, the devil will be in the details. The leadership has said that there's no wall money in there, which I think is an imperative, and it depends on what kind of security measures they want. So we've been told by experts the wall's a mistake. But there are other things we could do, and I think we could support. I know I could. Okay,
what he's going to say, you guys want a path to citizenship. He says no to that. Is that a deal breaker?
Have to see what this is what the essence of governing is give and take back and forth, and you see where the votes are. I think we should have full immigration reform. This could be the beginning of that discussion. First of all, we have to make sure these kids are protected.
Okay, but if we are going to make sure these kids are protected, some questions are going to have to be answered. And one is, for example, do we have a cutoff date? Those who are here at a certain date are okay, those who came after aren't. Or does this go on forever? The American public's going to want to know that.
So under DACA, they had up to 13 years. If they did what they were supposed to do, they didn't get arrested, they didn't get in any trouble, then they would be able to ostensibly. And again, DACA was set up so to try to pressure Congress to do something as well. This is more extreme, as you said in your lead into this, because you have the Texas Attorney General and 9 other attorney generals threatening to go to court.
Or do you think Democrats would be willing to say no more, that there's a cutoff point here?
A cutoff
for
point.
New kids coming across.
Yeah.
If a family came across today, would they be covered by DACA? Or does it stop? That's one of the questions being asked.
I think that's what the negotiations are about. So how do we have meaningful immigration reform, which means enforceability? So we need to have a law that is enforceable and does the right thing. So this discussion is a good one. We're relying on a president of the United States that heretofore has been hard to work with.
Okay, but if Democrats come in and say, we don't want a deadline. We want families, if they continue to come.
Phil, that depends.
Right, but if you say that, then all of a sudden he can turn around and say they won't go for security and they want a pathway to citizenship and they're not serious about reform. And then you guys are left holding the bag if something happens.
This is what democracy is supposed to work like. You're supposed to have a discussion. They're supposed to go through the process. There's a give and take, and you see where you're willing to compromise. And there is a willingness to compromise here.
All right. If we have a compromise, the next thing comes on getting it through the Congress. That means the House and the Senate. And they both have built in these rules in recent years that make it virtually impossible for things to even come up for a vote. You have the Hassett rule that says that unless explain that to me, because it's not a law or anything, it's an in-house rule.
So the Hassett rule is a rule enforced by the Democrat or the Republican leadership that says that bills will not come to the floor through the process unless there's a majority of votes within the Republican caucus to pass the bill, which is one of the big problems. So there's no bipartisan give and take when you have a enforced rule by the majority party saying they're not willing to talk to Democrats. This is why Speaker Boehner left.
Why do Washington, everybody fights so hard to get there and be on the big stage? Why are they so adverse to taking any kind of votes or any kind of action that is at least bit controversial?
Well, this is what's happened in D.C. This is having served at every level of government. In California, the legislature, you try to work across party lines as much as possible. It's still very partisan, but here you're not allowed to. And this started with Newt Gingrich. It was a deliberate policy to say we're not going to work with the Democrats. So if you want the Congress to work, there has to be compromise, there has to be transparency, and there has to be this kind of debate so the public can follow it.
And this idea of filibuster not being able to take it up in the Senate unless it almost has votes for passage, whatever happened to just voting?
Well, a filibuster rule has been in place for many, many more years than the Hassett rule. There is some benefit to it. I mean, you have to count to almost 20 states to come up to the equal population of California, which has 2 U.S. senators. Smaller states, you've got 23 states that have votes in the Senate. So the filibuster rule is problematic, but from my perspective right now, it's the only thing that's getting people to compromise. Okay.
Having said all that and laid out all the doomsday things, do you think something can work out on DACA?
Yes, I do. I think when one thing we've seen through this first year of this administration is when the public acts and responds, and they have on DACA 70%, not 92% where his number came up, but same with the Affordable Care Act. They couldn't get a law passed because the public reacted and said, no, we're not going to accept this.
Okay. All right. Well, his prediction's a little bit murky, but hopefully Netta has
No,
something.
it isn't.
Congressman
We'll
Mark
get an answer on
DeSaulnier.
DACA.
All right, you're going to get an answer on DACA.